Hi, I'm Jon Sicotte, Executive Editor of the Brewer Magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer Magazine podcast. We are sponsored by Keg Logistics, and you can go to keglogistics.com/brewermag for more details. You can also make sure that you're liking and subscribing so that you're seeing the Brewer Magazine podcast every week. We're both on YouTube and Spotify, so like and subscribe right now. Well, there's a lot of great stuff going on all the time. You got those kind of calendars that tell you what special day it is. Well, one of them that started last year is Craft Malt Month, and it's a time for breweries not just have the opportunity to celebrate the backbone of what every beer is. You know, a pint of beer has a lot of malt in it, but also rethink how you can support local maltsters in your area and how you can drive real business impact. So Root Shoot Malting is joining me to dig into to why this month, Craft Malt Month, matters for you as a brewery. And we're going to be looking at a lot of business cases behind craft malt, how consumer trends are shifting, and what a strong malt story can mean for ROI, along with brand loyalty and even distribution, and being able to get that out there. So let's explore how Craft Malt Month can be more than a celebration. It can be a strategy. This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency. And we are joined here on the Brewer Magazine podcast with Heyward Gualandi of Root Shoot Malting. Heyward, thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast.
Oh, excited to be here. Thanks for giving us a call.
Awesome. And happy Craft Malt Month. Number 2 is here. So let's get a little bit of the introductions out of the way. What is Craft Malt Month, and how is Root Shoot Malting involved with this?
Yeah, so Craft Malt Month, really an effort by the Craft Maltsters Guild to sort of grow awareness around the idea of malting and malt as a craft art, in the same way that brewers embrace craft. So small batches, lots of personal touch involved. Root Shoot is a member of the Craft Maltsters Guild. We're out here in Loveland, Colorado. We're vertical from farm to malt house, in our case. But really, we're just one among the guild, trying to sort of grow awareness really at the consumer level. And the idea with Craft Malt Month is really all about sort of partnering with those consumer facing folks, with brewers, tap rooms, and sort of growing that awareness at the consumer level, so folks get it, right? Kind of understand where we're coming from and why we're doing what we're doing, and why craft malt is different than large malt.
Right. And it's important. I know that it's kind of grown over the time. It started, I think, two or 3 years ago as like Malt Week, where
Right.
you guys, were kind of pushing things. Finally, the month of September is Craft Malt Month. Last year was the first one. What kind of changes, improvements, things did you see that kind of, because it became more of a central focus of a month and getting breweries involved, did you guys see an uptick in increase in what ways?
Yeah. I think the move from Craft Malt Week to Craft Malt Month. Well, first, let me start with September. This is about the time when folks really start to drink some more malt forward beers. Oktoberfest, of course, is a big one, and a style like that can really shine a light on a malt profile. So this is kind of the choice of the time of year. With regards to the move from week to month, it really is about streamlining and making it easier for folks to participate, right? I think a lot of what we're doing, this is a busy time in the industry, right? You're gearing up. Maybe you're pulling your Oktoberfests out, you're tapping those things. Maybe you have an Oktoberfest party, depending upon your model. And we wanted to make it easier for folks to participate at the producer level, right? Brewers. And so, if you're trying to ramrod something into a particular week, that just doesn't work for somebody. Or maybe, I think the idea of a month really speaks to allowing folks to get in where they fit in, I guess. for lack of a better way to put it, giving them plenty of opportunity. I mean, for a lot of people participating in some of our partners in the brewing space, right? They're using our malts year round. And perhaps even featuring this month a beer that is a core brand that they have all year round. But by using this month to tell the story, really shine a light on that. Say, hey, we make this beer all the time. You drink it when you're here. Well, this month while you're drinking it, we're going to donate a pint or $1 per pint to the Craft Maltsters Guild, in support of growing awareness of craft malt. You come here because you support us as a craft brewer, and we're shining a light up the supply chain to do the same, right?
Sure. And if breweries, have probably are like, yep, we've heard about it, we just don't know kind of how to get involved. What are some of those business cases? Like, why is it important to be a part of the Craft Malt Month and supporting your local maltsters wherever you're located in the U.S.?
I mean, I think it speaks to the same thing that a lot of craft brewers are experiencing, right? When they're having those conversations with their customers, what sets them apart? Why do people want to come in and have a pint? Because you know who's making it for you, right? Mm-hmm. You understand where it's coming from. And I think a lot of that same ethos that sort of brings a consumer into a small craft taproom space lends itself to that supporting up the supply chain.
And, how are you guys as, a malt company, as members of, the malt guild, looking to be more receptive, easier to get a hold of, whatever it is, to be able to create those business relationships with breweries? Like, what are you guys doing on your end to make sure that they understand you're available for them as well?
I think it's just showing up. You can't be everywhere all at once, but it really is worth the time to walk in at least once, right? So it's a crowded space. From the supplier perspective, I mean, we've got large domestic maltsters, we've got large maltsters on our continent, got small maltsters on our continent. We've got all kinds of craft brewers who are using malt from Europe and beyond as well. I think when you sort of connect those dots, right? I think the maltster connects the pint of beer back to the agriculture. The maltster is that piece where you think like, okay, well, not only, at least for the grain side of things anyway, right? I mean, you got hop farmers too, but it's easy to forget that beer is an agricultural product. And I think there's a growing movement and understanding of sort of being aware of where the food that you're consuming is coming from, and that's barley malt included. And so we can connect brewers back to the farmers that are physically growing those grains. You can walk the barley fields. It's lovely. Yeah. So I think that a small maltster has that to offer, where a larger maltster maybe is not as simple. Right? You're talking about maybe a global supply chain. And I know for Root Shoot in particular, we are the farmer. If you come to the malt house is situated on a field, and it doesn't grow barley every year because we rotate our crops, but it may have barley, in the field 15 steps away from the malt plant. That's not true for some maltsters, but they know they're farmers. And being able to connect those farmers back to the brewers, I think is a big part of it.
Absolutely. And from a personal experience for myself, as on a home brewer side, here in Northwest Ohio, we do have some local maltsters in Ohio. In fact, just one of them is about 45 minutes away from me. It's the cousin of a friend of mine who owns a brewery. I mean, that's, you're talking about relationships, but you can just go down there. They have a very small operation, but they're getting involved with the Northwest Ohio breweries as much as possible. And
Mhm.
yeah, the first thing I hear is, we're being made with Heartland malt. You can go down, to Bascom, Ohio, and be able to drive by. It's right on this road. You'll see the plant right there. Like it gives you that storytelling mode from a brewery's perspective. And at the same time, I think, like you said, consumer behavior has changed. They want to know where things are coming from. It can become a discussion of local. It can become a discussion of sustainability, being able to not have to have it shipped as far. There are many ways I think that breweries can tap into that thing. When it comes to the storytelling mode, we'll talk about that. But what about the ROI on this? How do you talk to breweries when they say, you know what, we have these contracts, we're working on this, but we're working for the future. How can, we find a price that is good for us, a return on investment? And maybe it's not always just about that top dollar, low dollar, I guess, in this term. What are the discussions that you guys have with them? Like, and I'm sure a lot of it comes down to quality.
It does. It does. But there's more than just that to it. I think there's a couple of things that I would want to unpack here. Um, I think what we've gotten ourselves into this sort of race to the bottom is what I call it. And that, that's the price war. And that's fair, right? We do need to be thoughtful. But just being local and sustainable, I think adds an element of economic resiliency, right? You're talking about freight costs or diesel fuel and transit costs. Tariffs are on folks' minds at this point,
Yes.
right? So, most of our craft maltsters are working with local farmers. They're not trying to move raw barley, across oceans in order to bring it here. We're blessed in this country, especially across the northern belts, being great barley growing regions, and so these craft maltsters are able to pull from local farmers. They've got shorter supply chains, right? So they can pay good rates without having to have as much of that go into freight costs. I think another element of ROI as far as craft malt is concerned is, a lot of our batch sizes are quite a bit smaller. And when we're working with smaller batch sizes and we're working closely with our brewery partners, we can customize malt profiles, right? I mean, we've got a lot of levers that we can pull at the malt house to sort of create something that is specifically what a brewer is looking for a particular beer. And if we know that, they intend to flagship this brand or they're going to keep it on as a year-round SKU, and we can forecast for that, we can begin to run some trials at small sizes and create a malt in partnership with a brewer that's exactly what they need, whether it's something to provide a little backbone behind a nice hop forward presentation, or whether it's a malt forward beer that they're trying to layer up with some different malt characteristics, right? I mean, there's a lot of opportunity, I think, that brewers have become accustomed to not having the opportunity to control. And by working with your supplier in that way, especially a small one, we can build what you need for any brand that you're trying to produce.
And again, that comes down to relationships and a lot of talking. How much, like, what type of timeline is that discussion if you are, as a brewer, looking for a certain thing and they're tasting what you already have on, saying, can we switch it to this? I mean, what kind of timeline can you offer them?
It depends on what they want to make, I suppose.
Sure.
Strictly speaking, on a production process, right? I mean, we get a harvest once a year, right? So we're storing raw barley ready to malt, right? So we have raw barley that has germinating power. Strictly speaking, from raw barley to finished malt, I'm talking about a week, right?
Right.
Fresh malt, I think, is better than old malt, but there's also a time period where you're going to want to let that malt rest prior to mashing in with it, right? So let's call it 3 weeks to a month in between deciding to start a malting and when a brewer can mash in with it. I think the difficulty comes in the iterations, right? And if you're trying, like, how far are you trying to take something outside of the scope of what the maltster is already producing, right? If you're just trying to take a pale malt and add a touch of extra color and bring your base kilning up a little bit, that shouldn't be too difficult, right? If you're trying to build a specialty malt, that could be quite a bit more difficult. So it depends on what you're making and how many times you need to iterate on that. But strictly speaking, for malt production, I mean, you're less than a month, right? We can go from raw to the malt that you asked us for, or at least an attempt to make the malt that you asked us for in that time. And then if you brew with it and you have some feedback for us, we can talk about, okay, well, we were looking for a little bit more maybe depth here or a higher color. How can we pull the levers that we have at our disposal at the malt house to get that a little further in the direction that you were hoping to get it. But if you're willing to have that sort of back and forth discussion as a brewer with your maltster, you can make some really nice beers that no one else is going to have the opportunity to make because that malt is functionally yours.
And that leans into, again, the storytelling mode and being able to tell the story of craft malt. And, how do you see that translating to results? And whether it's, any brewery clients that you guys have worked with that you got a, opportunity, maybe it's expanded your portfolio of what you're able to offer because they came to you with something, or, what are they seeing on their end? Whether it's, building a brand that, they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. I mean, are there stories that you guys like to be able to share that, show, how important it is to have that relationship and being able to go back and forth to help build a brewery's brand going forward?
Root Shoot will be 10 years next year. And a big part of the growth of our brand, especially in the early years, was really based on our Genie Pale malt, which is, Genie is the variety of barley that we use to make that malt, and it's a pale malt, right? So, I always turn my head sideways and smirk a little bit when people say two-row, because it's all two-row. But if you're talking about a pale malt, right? Genie Pale is, and this malt, I think, adds a little bit of a bigger backbone than a lot of, what you might call a standard American two-row. That malt was specifically designed in those iterative process for Station 26 down in Denver, and specifically their Juicy Banger IPA. So we were looking for a malt that added a hint of sweetness. I think Genie brings a touch of honey over your granola. And that proved to be a great backbone for sort of a hop forward, 7+% IPA that leans into a juicy profile. We went back and forth with this, with Station 26 on this malt a number of times, and sort of landed on it. And then, of course, in the first Craft Malt Cup, that malt also took best in show. So between those two things, you have someone who's committed to using it in a core brand, and then some positive PR coming through the Malt Cup that was hosted by the Maltsters Guild. That brand really formed the backbone of our growth, especially in the first half dozen years. And we've sort of added to the portfolio, subtracted from the portfolio in the meanwhile, trying to figure out what's the right balance of SKUs to offer. It's difficult to be all things for all brewers, right? But trying to find the right product mix, and that Genie Pale Malt has remained a key cog in that. And it's, I mean, functionally, it was developed to be a big IPA backbone pale malt. So when you've got brewers from Denver to Fort Collins making some rather nice IPAs, I think we've got some opportunity there.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of do a little, I guess, case study experiment about if I'm a new brewery owner walking in, talking to you guys, and asking how do we get the message out? How do we, tell the story of craft malt, beyond just saying, this is craft malt? What else is there? What do you guys push towards, collaborations, either, activations in the brewery, call outs, making sure it's mentioned on the menu? How do you say this is a great way to be able to, build that story if they are asking for that type of input? This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now is the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of that it'll come back to business model a little bit.
Yeah.
And our model is one of, nimble service. So we're definitely going to be doing those call outs, whether it's in social platforms or just showing up or trying to drive business to our partners. I think, the extent to which the brewery is going to choose to call out their supply chain is really sort of a choice in how they're building their brand. And so we try not to make that for them.
Mhm.
And we have partners who use our malt, and it's a part of their brand identity, right? That maybe they're projecting an image of Colorado local, and they're using everywhere that they can, they're using an ingredient that's from our state. And that's sort of part of the brand identity, and it's a little bit easier for them to tell that story in that way because they choose to. I think we have other partners whose brand identity isn't so closely tied in that way. And their decisions in terms of using our malt or maybe other ingredients are more driven on quality, right? Or maybe it's service, or maybe it's convenience, and those things that as a supplier you're trying to provide the right Venn diagram, right, of price and quality and service and convenience and all that stuff. But I think we're absolutely, especially with Craft Malt Month, we're doing collaborative beers. We're having beer releases. We're offering programs whereby, tap rooms are donating $1 per pint of a given beer all month long back to the guild and support. And that's a brand building thing. And I think it's a little tricky because you don't want to overstep your bounds as a supplier, right? At the end of the day, the brewers' brands are their own. And trying to find the right way to work with them that's in keeping with the brand that they're building, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. And like you said, there's probably different ways to do it in different markets, whether you're some sort of production model with a lot of distribution. It might
Right.
not hit like you said, it might not hit the same mark as if you guys go to a local brewery and, meet your maltster. These are the people that help make the grain that, that is going into this beer. Have you
One of
guys
the
had
most effective,
opportunities?
I'm just going to jump in. Sorry to interrupt, but I think one of the
Yeah.
most effective routes that we found is actually engaging those folks at the brewery. That's the front of house people. That's your beer tenders, production staff, to the extent that they can squirrel away the time to get there, but bringing them physically to the malt house, bringing them to the farm, exposing them to that next level up the supply chain, right? Like sort of dispelling the notion that malt comes from a bag. And connecting those dots on the production process back to the agricultural product in the first place. I mean, you're talking barley malt or wheat malt, hops, like beer is an agricultural product. The fact that we've developed the capability throughout our supply chains between very talented brewers, extremely good brewing systems, maltsters who are compensating constantly for fluctuating inputs and generating something that year after year you might crack open a can and feel like you have the same product. That's a kudos to everybody in supply chain, right? Because nothing about the constituent parts is stable from year to year.
Absolutely. I think, and that a lot of, I guess, on the consumer end, don't get that. How much is it for you guys to be working year after year, checking what you're doing on the end to try to, be that front line of consistency? I mean, how much effort is it year to year for you guys to be able to continue to supply the same or close to consistent products?
Yeah, I mean, ask your maltster. That's what we do. Because we're gonna just when we get the hang of a particular crop year and how it's going to act, it's time to move on to the next crop year. Not exactly just when we get the hang. I mean, we get the hang of it and we hit a stride for a little while, but we don't get to dictate the incoming barley's protein level. We can sort of compensate for that, And crop year to crop year, color pickup in the kiln varies, even if it's the same barley variety, right? So we have to sort of, when we're getting into, we're making a crop year transition and we know it's coming up, we're going to start testing out next crop year raw materials before we've run out of last year's, so that we can continue to make consistent from last year's, because we have that dialed in. And if color pickup is a little heavy on the incoming crop year, and we run it through a kiln and we're expecting a Pilsner profile, and color lands a little bit dark, we're starting to understand, okay, so we're going to have to probably back off time and temperature a little bit here, in order to achieve the same color output from year to year. I think, germination is pretty steady. But yeah, it's constantly experimenting. It's barley variety beyond that as well. Different varieties will act differently. You'll definitely need to give them different steeping or germination regimens based on variety. And then you'll have sort of in process and kilning adjustments as well. And, I think it's important to note that, I think large maltsters have the advantage of bulk and blending. And smaller maltsters, I know that Root Shoot, we operate mostly on a batch system, which is to say every batch is its own batch, and we've got our fingers in there, and we're knee deep in it, trying to make it as consistent as possible. But the most we can really do at this point is to blend 2 batches together, which we definitely do in crop year transitions, where we know we have a new crop year coming. We'll start to blend in the last crop year so that we're minimizing any sort of drastic change that a brewer might see. But if your brewer's dialed in, they're going to be asking you for those certificates of analysis on a given batch, and they're going to be also making compensation for any minor fluctuation, right? Whether that's a few points SRM on a specialty malt, where you're going to have to dial your grist ratios, or protein level, right? Which is really only controllable at the agricultural side. That's the farm side. The maltster has no control over inbound protein other than to reject if it's too high.
How are things going this year for you guys? What's the new stuff? What's the good stuff? What are you excited about going forward with what Root Shoot has to offer?
Totally. Terroir is real in malt. Yeah, our barley harvest is in. We planted this year. We planted 2 winter varieties, one called Magic and one called Thunder, that we're pretty excited about. In the dry Colorado climate, winter barley, goes in late September, early October, and it's in the ground for much longer. It overwinters, it goes dormant. It has access to our early spring rains when the ground would still be, too wet to actually drive a tractor and plant spring barley in. So it's a soil health thing in terms of, active growing roots in the soil for more months, more days of the year. And then we're able to harvest it just a couple of weeks earlier than spring barley. And of course, that summertime in Colorado is very dry and hot. And that's when we have protein climb. If you have drought conditions, you could experience some protein climb as the barley responds to drought. And so we were actually able to harvest both of those winter barleys without using any irrigation water off of the irrigation ditches, which is huge for us. We don't expect to be able to do that every year, but that's kind of what we're hoping to see. So we saw good yield there. We saw really nice protein levels in the 11%, 11.5% zone. So the barley harvest is in. Last year, I don't know if you were following, but we lost quite a bit of barley to hail last year. That was a mega bummer. The corn is still up, as we're going to let that dry in the field, but our small grains are all in. We're stoked on that. And we're experimenting really with using individual barley varieties at very light Pilsner kilning profiles to sort of get a feel for what barley variety brings to the table in terms of that. So you can experience in your glass with a very pale beer, this is still a Pilsner malt. The colors are very similar, less than 2 SRM, 1.5 SRM. But this barley variety might accentuate some straw or some hay or some of that stuff. This barley variety might just be a touch of grain and very clean. What we're seeing with Magic on the first returns, we've only brewed, or had our partners have only brewed with it a couple times, but some of the lowest turbidity we've seen in wort, really very clean. Stoked on that. This was our first year trialing malted corn as well. So we're malting our non-GMO distiller's corn. That's very weird stuff to watch grow compared to barley in the germination cycle. So Root Shoot is primarily a base malt house, by the way. We don't own a roaster, so we don't make black malts. We don't make chocolate malts. We live in the low color sort of base malt zone. So we're experimenting within that. And that experimentation really is driven by what we're doing on the farm.
Absolutely. Craft malt is for everyone.
It can be. It can be. You know, it's tough again because we can't hit the prices of the supply chain. These multinational supply chains, their economies of scale. Even our choices in barley variety to grow are driven by our economies of small scale, right? We can't afford to lose a crop. I'll hit you with a weird one. Maybe you did or didn't know. A lot of modern bred barley varieties are bred to remove dormancy. And in other words, the kernel is prepared to germinate functionally almost immediately after the harvest. The upshot, of course, is that you don't have to have as much storage space for all this barley. You can bring it from the harvest and take it straight to the malt house, and it's ready to germinate and grow. The downside is that if you have a summer rain event, your barley may not be in the harvest bin. It may still be up in the field. Rain comes through. The barley doesn't have a dormant trait, and you're actually sprouting and germinating in the field on the stalk. Well, now that crop is shot. So there's a lot of advantages there, but you can no longer malt that. You can hopefully sell it for feed. We don't have the capacity on the farm side to absorb that kind of loss. And so we're not willing to take the risk. And so we're growing dormant varieties for the most part. And there's a lot of give and takes with that, right? So it is for everyone, but maybe, if your brand is driven by distribution, your margins are small, you're using cans a lot, you're going through the 6-pack, off trade or whatever, those are tiny margins. Maybe those folks are using silo malt at a price that Root Shoot can't touch, but maybe they have an opportunity to pull some Munichs or some specialties or some malted corn or some malted oats or some oddities that where we can be a little closer on price to what you might expect from the big guys, and bring you an element of connection back to the farm and quality. And so it's finding the right mix, and it is for everyone, right? Because it makes delicious beer.
Yeah. Well, I want to, before we leave, I always like to ask a few fun questions, get to know you a little bit, get to just have some fun, end with some laughs. And so I'll just throw out a few random questions that I have written down. And we'll bring it. So let's do the first one. If you had to describe Root Shoot's vibe in 3 words, what would it be?
Oh, wow. Fun, for sure. Family. It's probably got to be an F word, doesn't it?
You can,
farts.
There we go. We're all set. There's the
except for Emily, she doesn't fart.
You got to have a guilty pleasure. That's a non-craft beverage. What is your guilty pleasure? Is there a bear?
No. Where is he?
Oh,
it's a buck.
I do. Hey, there's a buck. Look at that. The things you see here on Brewer Magazine's podcast. That's awesome.
Mule deer buck. Guilty pleasure. Staying up too late to watch football so that it's hard to help with the kiddo in the morning.
Did you stay up last night and watch Monday Night Football?
I did. Skol, brother.
Yeah. Guess what? I lost. my fantasy football team. Like, no one cares about your fantasy football team, but I'm going to tell this story anyway. I was playing the Vikings defense. They gave up that touchdown late, the garbage touchdown, which lost points in fantasy. So I took the lead by 1.5. Then they ran that crazy last play. DJ Moore fumbles the ball. Minnesota picks it up. That's 2 points for the defense, and he beats me by 0.4 points. That's my bad beat of week 1 in the fantasy football league. It's
a total garbage time, irrelevant fumble.
Well, cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk about the Craft Malt Month and what is going on at Root Shoot. And, I think hopefully it'll inspire some more breweries to get involved, talk about craft malt, and help support the craft malt industry. So thanks so much for being a part of this.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate you shining a light on it. I mean, at the end of the day, the Craft Malt Guild here in the States is just full of small businesses trying to make a way and also to help folks make the best beer that they can. We're just stoked to be a part of it. It's a budding little sector, going up against some big business. And not that that's necessarily like big meanies, but it's just tough.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck going forward. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Cheers.
This Brewer Mag podcast is sponsored by Keg Logistics. Now's the perfect time to review your keg management strategy. Whether you're seeking a truly flexible keg rental program or intrigued by the seamless distribution freedom of paper fill, Keg Logistics is ready to craft a personalized solution for you, ensuring you receive the kegs you need precisely when you need them. For details, visit keglogistics.com/brewermag. Keg Logistics, modern solutions for keg efficiency.